So it starts with a person's voice announcing the beginning of the Tower of Trials, where the challengers must clear 100 floors in order to receive the ultimate reward. In front of these hulking monsters stood a man, casually commenting that he had been waiting for this moment for the past 10 years. And this man is a player by the name of Ji-Nu, the #1 ranked player of the game called the Battle of Summoners. But unfortunately, the game had been dead for quite some time now, with hardly any active players, all because of its insane Souls-like difficulty, paired with brutal grind and unforgiving mechanics. So over time, people moved to better things. But not Ji-Nu. He kept grinding, and with the small community of hardcore players that was slowly fading away, he became a legend, clearing floor after floor in insane conditions, and eventually he made it to floor 99 of the game, where he had been stuck for quite some time now. Well, that's enough of his gaming life. His real life is a complete mess. Although he looks sharp, takes showers, and takes care of his hygiene unlike most of you guys out there, Ji-Nu has nothing else going on for himself, which is why he is planning on finally quitting gaming after wasting 10 years of his life. Apparently, just for this one particular game, he didn't even finish college, which basically means no stable job. No stable job means no good income, which is directly proportionate to no bitches, which is why his parents were really worried about their 24-year-old virgin-for-life son who only knows the worth of in-game achievements. But they loved him too much to stand in his way and allowed him to make his own decisions. But he knew deep down they were disappointed in him. Okay, back in the game. Ji-Nu felt something flying by his face, so he immediately turned to see what it was, only to find 2 Amazonians with magical bows standing behind him, which are said to be one of the main and hardest bosses of this stage. Which is why Ji-Nu got ready to face them for who knows how many times and opened his inventory. And this list right here is his summons he had been collecting for over the years. And to face off against these 2 creatures, he summoned his ultimate defensive type summon called the White Whale. The creatures began shooting their arrows, but our boy was already in position, and thanks to the skill, he easily managed to stop all the incoming projectiles. Well, not exactly easily, since it did prove somewhat difficult for him to stand his ground to fight the pressure being released from those blasts. But in the middle of it all, the 2 creatures suddenly spotted 2 laser beams being shot at them from the smoke, which they managed to easily dodge. And thinking it was over, they turned to the guy, only for those lasers to curve back at them like they had a mind of their own and pierce right through their stomachs. As for the one responsible for launching that attack, he was just standing there with not even a scratch on his body. But just as he thought it was finally over, something began to happen. A massive dragon-looking creature suddenly dropped from the sky behind him with a fireball ready in its mouth. Before Ji-Nu could process where the thing came from, the creature had already launched that fire toward him. But thanks to those countless hours of grinding, Ji-Nu's instincts kicked in, and he immediately summoned his blue dragon. The creature instantly opened its jaws and released an attack of its own toward the overgrown lizard, resulting in both attacks colliding and creating a massive storm of ice and fire swirling all around the area. Ji-Nu just stood there staring at the sight in shock, and then boom, the whole place erupted in a massive explosion, followed by a congratulatory window popping open on his screen for clearing all 100 floors of the tower. And the kid was so hyped that he actually started jumping in the middle of the street, which obviously caught the attention of the other pedestrians who stared at the moron dancing for some reason. But Ji-Nu didn't care. He was so happy that his 10 years of grinding finally paid off that literal tears began streaming down his eyes. But still, it was now finally time to say goodbye to this game for good. But before that, he needed to pull off a final flex in front of the veterans. But while he was busy doing that, the people around him were staring at something that suddenly appeared in the sky. And yeah, you guys probably already know what's coming here. Sure enough, as he turned his gaze to the sky, he spotted a gigantic window floating over the building with a message congratulating him on clearing the 100th floor of the Tower of Trials. And what do you know? All that was nothing but the beta testing period of the game. And now the real game was about to begin. Before the people could make sense of what they were seeing, countless red scrolls of some kind began raining down from the sky. And none of the people knew what they were looking at. Just then, the ones who were holding those pieces of paper saw a system window appearing in front of them, instructing them to tear the summoning scrolls. And these absolute morons, thinking this was some kind of festival or promotion, actually decided to do what that window was saying. But our hero, who knew exactly what those things were, tried stopping the man. But by then it was already too late, and the guy ripped the thing in two, resulting in a massive explosion going off, which I presume turned him into nothing but a charred corpse on the floor. But that wasn't what had our hero horrified. The thing he was more terrified of was a new window, which was saying that a new world was being created. Sure enough, in those same couple of seconds, the sky turned red, followed by a literal army of hideous-looking monsters that began swarming the entire city. Ji-Nu was so overwhelmed with everything that was going on that he even forgot where he was standing. And by the time he remembered he was blocking traffic, it was already too late, as one of the cars completely ran over him. And not just any car, it was Truck-Cone, who personally made a special appearance to send him to his next world. In his final moments, Ji-Nu could only curse his luck and the game. After all, he spent 10 years grinding it non-stop, And just as he got ready to start his new life, he got hit with this nonsense. And now he was about to die without getting anything out of it. The story cuts to a hospital, and the kid was seen lying on the hospital bed with his parents standing next to him, followed by the sound of news playing in the background, as the person on the other end claimed something about an international player league that was held in South Korea, but the results this time were recorded to be bottom tier. Just then, his mother got startled as she noticed the kid's hand moving, so she shouted for her husband to call the doctor. After a while, the kid was seen sitting on his bed with his parents explaining to him what happened and what was going on. And what they had to say left the kid in utter shock, since turns out he had been sleeping on this bed for the past 3 years. And during this time, everything in the outside world had changed. But I'll just sum it up so it's easier to understand. This little guy right here is his father's summon. So yeah, everything went to shit because he decided to waste 10 years of his life, and a lot of people lost their lives because of the destruction that was brought upon this world. After a while, the kid was watching the news where some blonde woman was claiming that in order to stop these monsters from spawning and to save their world, they need to find South Korea's Ji-nu, because only he has the knowledge and power required to clear the tower. While the world was desperately looking for this so-called ultimate player by the name of Ji-nu, the guy had been sleeping the whole time on a hospital bed. But that's not the most important thing here. The important thing here is that woman's name Rachel, who he was certain was one of the members of the One Heaven 5 Emperors from the game. Just then, in the middle of his thoughts, he spotted a system window popping open in front of him, asking if he would like to start the tutorial. And his mother, acting like that was the most normal thing in the world, suggested he rest up first before going in there. And our hero, equally serious, told his mother there was no need for that, since he had plenty of rest in the past 3 years, and since he was already behind in the race to the top, he got ready to start this grind. And since he had already beaten this game before, he was confident it would take him no time to reach the top once again. After being discharged from the hospital, the first thing Ji-nu did was log in on his PC and gather as much information about this new world as possible. And according to his findings, things aren't looking too good because everyone sucks like really bad. As for what happened to the world, all the game systems and events became part of this world's new reality. Yes, it also includes taking some innocent little summons and making them fight to the death, which is just cruel in my opinion. But it is what it is. As for the people, in the past 3 years, they have somewhat become adapted to this new reality, and were adjusting just fine with their new summons. Yeah, no, even though they had a 3-year head start, those guys were so pathetically weak that our hero could run circles around them. So he got ready to start his little comeback to show them how a pro climbs that tower. Next panel, and he was standing in a completely different place. And no, he didn't get teleported. He just came to this isolated place to summon his first summon since he was afraid of wrecking his whole apartment. If he did it at home, well, guess we completely missed the whole tutorial stage. But he got 2 low-grade summoning scrolls as a reward. And he was shivering, since he was afraid of pulling something garbage from the start. Because even with his knowledge from the game, if he got stuck with some trash summon, he was screwed. His chances of pulling something decent were also pretty slim, all thanks to the devs who designed this pulling system to be notoriously unfair, with only a 1% chance of getting a D-rank summon. And after making as many prayers and pleas as possible, he tore the first scroll. But surprisingly, nothing happened. All he saw was a system window popping open in front of him. Just as he was wondering if he wasted the first scroll by doing something wrong, the thing in his hands began to glow. And then boom, a flash of bright light shot out of the thing, scaring the soul out of the kid. Terrified, he let go of the thing, and as soon as it hit the ground, smoke began to pour out from the item. And then bam, a pixie. I hope, because if it's some lowly, I'm dropping this even though I already covered 8 minutes. Well anyway, turns out it's just a normal pixie. Well, not normal, since she is EX level, which is something our hero had never heard of. As for the little one, she slowly opened her eyes to see where she was and immediately began panicking. And no, it wasn't because of the dumb look the guy was giving her, but because she couldn't believe that someone actually summoned her, since it had been forever a player managed to pull her through a draw. Our hero was equally shocked as her, since a talking pixie was even more shocking to our hero than everything that was going on in the world. Since when did these things gain the ability to speak? But then, as he looked closer, he recalled something from the game. So to double check, he asked the tiny girl if she was Ramba, which at first the girl denied, since she was just a wind fairy. But then she herself remembered something about a person who used to call her by that name, and that someone was Ji-nu, which would also mean that the one standing before her was none other than Ji-nu himself. And the poor thing was so emotional that she straight up began bawling her eyes out after finally reuniting with her friend. Yeah, our hero suddenly recalled who this little pixie is. She's an E-rank summon which he used for a while in game. So basically, she is more of a support type summon, if that makes sense. She has an ability to boost the main summon's attack speed, and how she does it is by swinging that staff of hers, and the more she swings that thing, the faster the summon becomes. In his newbie days, he used to use her a lot, which is why she was one of the very few summons he actually got close enough to give them a name, and hers was Ramba. Damn, what kind of an idiot names such a cute little fairy Ramba? This guy's worse than Sung Jin-woo when it comes to naming things. Okay, let's get back on track. So this one right here was a summon that got removed from the game one day out of nowhere during some bug patch, and the reason that was given to the players was that she had some serious imbalance issues. Back then, he was really pissed since he spent a whole year raising this summon, and they just removed her out of nowhere without any compensation. Going through her details, he saw the usual basic stuff. She is a wind fairy that increases a single target summon's attack speed by 3%. But there was another thing in there that caught his eye, which was her rank that was listed to be EX rank, with something called isolated. Turning to Ramba, he heard the girl mumbling through her tears about how one day she was suddenly dragged off to some weird place and was trapped there with no way to escape. But our heartless fool, instead of consoling the poor thing, suddenly slapped her off his face. After which he asked what she meant by trapped and who was the one who put her there. Well, it turns out in the heat of the moment, she said something she definitely shouldn't have, so now she had no clue how she was supposed to fix this. So instead of answering him, she began acting like her head was about to explode, trying to recall what happened back then, and someone give her an Oscar, because the girl is giving 101% in this over-the-top performance. And guess what? The fool standing before her actually bought all that overselling nonsense and apologized for pushing her too hard, and he asked her to just tell him what she could remember. Glad that the kid was a moron, she got up and told him there wasn't much she can remember. All she could say was that she wasn't able to leave that place no matter how much effort players put into trying to summon her. Yeah, that they part caught our hero's attention, so he asked what she meant by that and who was this they she was talking about, and if there were more summons in that place besides her. The answer was a yes. But the problem was she and all of them were locked in different rooms, so she doesn't know anything about the others, and as far as she can tell, there were probably around 10 individuals. Suddenly, a thought hit our boy's head as he recalled something from the game. Turns out our little Pixie wasn't the only summon he lost due to patches and updates. There were 9 more summons, and if it was the same case as Ramba, then those summons must also be EX rank and isolated. Looking at the thing on the ground, he wondered if he was a special case, probably the only person in the world who had the ability to summon EX rank summons, and thinking that this must be his reward for clearing 100 floors, he tore the second scroll. Yeah, no, the game hit him with the worst possible pull by giving him an F-rank hairy gorilla. Yup, all that big talk and stuff, and he was left on the spot staring at the overgrown baboon in complete disbelief. That left him with just one final explanation. He needed to get his hands on as many summoning scrolls as possible to summon the other EX rank summons. With that in mind, he called out to Ramba, and when asked what he wanted, she heard the guy telling her not to call him Jin-woo from now on and only refer to him as Jin-woo. And when the Pixie asked the reason, he lost himself in his own thoughts. As for the reason, it was a really dumb one, but I'll just go with it. So basically, thanks to that woman on the news, his in-game name has already spread across the world, which also means that people are actively hunting him. And even with his in-game knowledge and experience, he wasn't sure he would be able to compete with them after the 3 years he spent sleeping. So revealing that he was the same Jai-Nu from the game might attract the eyes of those driven by envy and jealousy. Just then, the ground suddenly began shaking violently. Before our boy could understand what was going on, the 2 summons saw something appearing in the place that had them surprised. Seeing their faces, our hero also turned to see what had the 2 so spooked and spotted a basic dungeon gate appearing before them, followed by a voice asking him to proceed to the next step. But our hero was second-guessing this whole thing, since for one, he just got his hands on his first 2 summons, and 2, even though he had been inside of that place countless times, he was feeling genuinely uneasy seeing that portal with his own eyes in the real world. But he calmed himself, since it's not like he was going to be fighting himself. His summons were going to be the ones doing the work, and more importantly, this was just a low-level dungeon, so it shouldn't be that hard. With that in mind, he slowly began walking up to the thing to get this over with. Next chapter, and he was standing inside what seems like some kind of a creepy cave. Checking his system window, he saw this place was called the Beginner's Dungeon, and since this was his first ever dungeon, the system told him the rules. To fight in a dungeon, he must form a team with summons, and the maximum number of summons per team is 5. But since he only entered this place with 2 summons, the system asked if he would like to create a team with them. Well, normally he would do anything to make sure every single slot in that party is filled, but with just Ramba and his monkey, he was beginning to hesitate, since this was indeed pretty reckless. But still, he was sure with the right strategy he could beat this place with just the 2 of them. With that in mind, he selected yes on the screen, and boom, both his summons appeared in the room as one team. So this part is important because the only way Ramba can use her buff on Little Monkey is if they are both in a team. Otherwise, her buff won't work on him. Okay, enough explanation. He turned to start his first trial, and just as he was hoping he'd get a weak first monster, his eyes landed on his system window, which showed that somewhere inside this cave, a starving gray wolf was prowling, and he needed to beat that thing in order to advance and escape the cave. Just then, his feet began to glow, followed by a system window assuring him he was being protected inside a shield, so none of the attacks from the monsters were going to reach him. And at first I thought this was just going to be a boring fight. He's hiding behind his shield with no real risks. But no, turns out if his summons are defeated, he would be next on the menu for the monster. And yeah, this time there are no second chances or spawn points, meaning if he fails, it's game over for him permanently. After a while, they managed to find the creature. And damn, the thing looked hungry. As for our hero, he shouted to his monkey to smash that creature's skull in like Kong. The monkey followed his command and ran straight into the fight. Yeah, no, turns out the guy is slow as hell. And that scared our hero shitless, since if this stupid monkey fails, he's dead. But lucky for them, they had Ramba on their side, so he called out to her to buff the monkey. The girl obeyed, flew straight in, and activated her ability. And as soon as she swung that thing, some kind of green light began seeping into Monkey's body. Oh yeah, he could feel the power, and thanks to the boost, he charged in once more to put all this adrenaline to good use. Wolf wasn't planning on backing down either, just because there were two of them, so it began charging in as well. And seeing that thing moving, our boy began to panic, since that thing looked massive in real life, and he wondered if he might have made a mistake, challenging it with just his monkey. But still, he knew there was no room to back down anymore, so he placed all his faith into Harambe. Wait, you know what? I'll call him Harambe from now on. That suits him better. Well anyway, both sides leaped at each other, and then bam! Red liquid was seen splattering all over the place. And yeah, it was just as our hero had feared. That liquid came from Harambe, who got pinned to the ground almost immediately as the overgrown doggy sank its teeth into his shoulder. But not giving up, Harambe tried fighting back, but the thing was just too strong. Realizing he might lose Harambe here, our boy shouted for Ramba, and the poor girl who was already swinging with everything she had began swinging even faster. And thanks to that, Harambe got a little bit of boost, which he needed, and then whack, he uppercutted the hell out of the giant wolf. And the thing landed, crash landed several meters into the distance. But Ramba wasn't done. So to finish this off with one final attack, she made a left swipe followed by a beautiful right swipe, resulting in Harambe gaining enough power that the dude literally jumped several meters into the air with that massive body of his. And boom, Hulk smash. He knocked the air out of the poor thing's lungs, and I'm pretty sure he ended up breaking some of its ribs in the process as well. But don't think it was over, because he immediately began hammering the thing on that very same spot with relentless punches to cause as much damage as possible. And just like that, a massive explosion engulfed that whole part of the cave, with the two in the back staring at the whole thing in silence, wondering if that much was enough to stop that creature. And surprisingly, it was, since the thing was completely motionless on the ground. As for Harambe, the guy was so pumped with his first victory that he straight up began doing his victory dance, followed by cheers from Ramba, who herself was pretty hyped that they managed to beat that monster all on their own. As for the rewards, our boy received 2 lesser strength runes. Cut to the outside, and a person was seen counting some money, which they managed to earn by selling some runes. And this someone is a female by the name of Baek A-jin, who just happens to be our boy's younger sister. As for her story, after the sudden changes that were brought into their world, she found herself a good-paying job, which is a rune farming player. So basically, she isn't suited for battle, so she mainly enters low-level dungeons, finds runes, and sells them to promising players. But it wasn't always this easy for her, because in the beginning, after our hero's accident, their family situation got a lot worse, which is why she was forced to become a player. And one day, she miraculously came across an intermediate-grade summoning scroll while running a dungeon. And with a merely 1% drop rate, she managed to obtain a C-rank summon, something called a Shadow Elf. So yeah, that's basically her story. Just then, she received a call from her brother, which was kind of surprising. So she picked it up and asked if he got discharged from the hospital. Our boy answered yes. As for why he called her, it was because he heard from their father that she had become a rune hawker. Yeah, no, the girl didn't appreciate being called a hawker, so she immediately screamed at the kid to call her a rune farmer instead. Our boy apologized, and getting to the point, he asked if she could tell him about a place called a synthesis shop. The girl told him about some player zone that provides that service. So basically, when the Tower of Trials appeared across the world, people needed a place to handle summon-related business. So to meet that demand, player zones were created, which pretty much have everything from synthesis shops, enhancement centers, and much more. Cut to the girl who was telling our hero all that stuff. She also added that there were 2 towers in their city by the names of Gemsel and Hyundai that also got turned into Towers of Trials. And those 2 were the only places in the whole of Korea that turned into Towers of Trials, which is why that's the only place where he can find player zones. Changing topics, she asked about his summons and what he managed to pull. Stuttering, our hero quickly told the girl E and F rank, which immediately brightened her face, since E rank was really good. Yeah, if only she knew what an absurdly overpowered and overly dramatic Pixie he got stuck with. Quickly changing topics, he told the girl he would need her help in adjusting to this new reality, since he still had no clue how things worked. And he even promised to give her pocket money, and yeah, the girl immediately reminded the fool that she made more money than he did. Yeah, our boy agreed that was the case for now. But he reminded the girl he was just getting started. And who knows, maybe in the future he might actually go on to become the world's best player. But the girl wasn't too certain about that. She told the kid a lot of people start off with that same mindset, but reaching that level was impossible because that spot was dominated by Rachel and Xenos, and people like those are chosen ones, someone they can't compete with. Hearing those names actually brought a smirk on our boy's face, since those guys were nothing compared to him back in the game. But since this wasn't the time to tell her everything, he got up, asking the girl to just show him around for now, since he was curious to know what a player zone looks like for himself. After a while, both siblings were seen making their way to the place while making small talk. That is when Ajin asked about his summon and what he got, and got surprised hearing he managed to pull a wind fairy, since that was her first time hearing about a summon of that type. So she asked him to bring her out since she wanted to see, but our hero straight up said no, and that annoyed the girl. After all, not like she was asking for much, she just wanted to see. Annoyed, our hero agreed, but only if she shows him her summon first. The girl happily obliged and began summoning her awesome, super rare C-rank summon, which got our hero wondering just what kind of a summon she managed to get her hands on to be this hyped. And then he saw it with his own eyes, a shadow elf, C-rank summon. Yeah, no, definitely not what he was expecting to see after hearing her brag so much about it. And that dumb look he was giving really pissed the girl off, because according to her, anything at rank C or higher is considered noble tier. And our hero wasn't even sure how to tell the girl that they used to turn summons like that one into experience in the synthesis shop because they are so weak, and bringing those into a dungeon was basically suicide. But deciding not to break her heart, he began calling out to the thing, which for some reason surprised both girls. Annoyed, Ajin asked what he was doing, to which our boy told the girl he was just trying to say hello to her summon and ask her to take care of her little sister. And surprisingly, he heard the girl asking if he lost his mind or something, because how was he planning to communicate with a summon, since turns out these things can't talk. And that made zero sense since his Ramba was able to talk, and he assumed all humanoid summons possessed the ability to speak. Confused, he asked the girl if she was sure about that, or if there are any special class of summons that had the ability to speak, but the answer was no. Well, turns out Ramba is a special case who not only is an EX rank summon, but somehow also possesses the ability to speak human language. Annoyed, the girl asked him to just summon his Pixie, but our hero changed his mind after realizing how special Ramba was, and that obviously annoyed the girl since they had a deal, to which our hero told the girl he would keep his promise and show her the summon, but not right now. Plus, it was getting late, so he suggested they head for the building. Cut a couple minutes and our boy was staring at the sight before him in amazement, because this place was completely different from what he remembered from 3 years ago. Turns out this place used to be some kind of theme park which was torn down after the Tower of Trials appeared. And when asked why, Ajin reminded the kid why would anyone in their right mind visit a park with their family, which was right next to that gloomy tower filled with monsters. But to our hero, that would have been a perfect tourist attraction, since that makes things more thrilling. Yeah, not sure what kind of thrills he was looking for, but in the real world, people don't take risks like that. After a while, they arrived in the marketplace, where he found people doing all sorts of transactions. Basically, this place is for buying and trading stuff like summoning scrolls and runes. Not sure how, but this site was making our boy feel nostalgic, since back in the game, he used to have a friend, a very, very rich friend, and both of them used to tear through countless scrolls on a daily basis. With that friend's money, of course. In the middle of the tour, Ajin suggested he take it slow and check out the academy that is run by the player's headquarters first to understand how things work. But to her surprise, our boy refused, since he was pretty sure he was the only player alive who had the most in-depth knowledge about this game. Plus, his main focus for now is grinding for levels, so he doesn't have time for academy or anything. And since that was the case, he asked the girl to head back home, since he was going to stick here for a while. She tried stopping the kid, but by then he was already walking away, assuring her he was going to be back home in a couple of hours so she doesn't need to worry about him. Turns out the girl is no fool. She noticed back in that cafe that the kid had been acting a lot stranger after waking up, and she wondered what could be the reason. Plus, she was worried sick about the fool since he just woken up after spending 3 years in a coma, but he was running around like he was completely fine. But in the end, she figured he was just trying his hardest to figure things out. So as a good little sister, she should support him. With that in mind, she shouted at the fool to take care of himself and not push himself too much. And if he needed anything, just give her a call. Cut a bit, and our hero managed to find a secluded spot with no one around. So the first thing he did was summon Ramba, and the excited little one jumped right at the kid to give him a hug. But our hero asked her to stay quiet, which surprised the girl. And when asked if everything was alright, our hero scanned the whole place to see if anyone could be watching them. And after confirming that the area was clear, he whispered to the girl that from now on she wasn't allowed to open her mouth. Terrified by that expression he was making, she asked the reason. Well, turns out he wasn't saying she can't completely speak, just not outside. Inside of dungeons, she can do whatever she wants. As for why she can't speak when he summons her into the real world, it was because he didn't want to deal with unnecessary attention. After a bit, he was seen going through his bank account to see how much he had to spend on summoning scrolls. Yeah, it turns out he had enough for 2 days of food. Nothing can get worse than this. because even if he picks up part-time jobs, he was sure he won't be able to make enough for one scroll. Okay, so some of you guys must be wondering why not just ask his parents. Well, turns out both of them are working 3 jobs just to keep their family afloat. So how was he supposed to ask them, knowing full well their situation? Even though he was sure they would never turn him down, that just wasn't him. Man, is it just me, or did you guys also feel a tightness in your heart watching that poor woman working herself to death? And here I thought only our lives were ruined by the people in charge. Probably should focus on the story, I guess. So despite all the odds against him, our hero refused to back down. After all, there is a reason everyone in the game used to hail him as a king. Because unlike other players who threw a ton of money into the game to grow stronger, he, on the other hand, did it with his own skill, and he was sure he could do it again. Just then, in the middle of his thoughts, he suddenly received a message, and upon checking, he saw someone just dumped 500,000 won in his bank account, out of nowhere. Shocked, he began checking who it was. And what do you know? A mother's heart always knows when her child needs her. It was his own mom who sent him this cash, since she knew he was never going to ask her for money. At this point, Jinu didn't know what he was supposed to even think. He spent 10 years of his life wasting on a game, and when he met with that accident, his mother never left his side and had to work non-stop to cover his medical expenses, all so she could see her baby boy well and healthy again. And that brought tears to the kid's eyes as he thanked the woman for all the sacrifices she had to make for his sake. And because of that, he was more determined than ever to change his family's life and give them a better future. With that, he opened up his system shop, and the first thing he did was buy 3 summoning scrolls to complete his team. As soon as he tore through the thing, the same thing began happening as the first time. And bam, his first summon appeared in front of him called Sludge, an F-rank monster. Second up was Horned Butterfly, another F-rank monster. And finally, Poison Lizard, an E-rank creature. Well, that was a surprise since he never expected to pull 2 E-rank summons in one day. Well, technically, Ramba isn't an E-rank, but still, it's a big win. As for the rest, yeah, that Sludge thing, despite looking kind of cute, he wasn't too sure he was going to use it very often, and he was planning to throw it away as soon as he gets his hands on something better. And with the team finally assembled, he got ready to start his first official dungeon run. And his plan was to challenge as many dungeons as possible and gain maximum amount of experience. Use that to buy more summon scrolls and vice versa. After which comes the second step, gather all 10 of his EX rank summons, create an overpowered team by maxing them out, and clear the Tower of Trials once again. I wasn't hoping this story to be too deep, but damn, I love what the artist is cooking right now. Chapter 5, and he was still standing there trying to act all cool, thinking to himself he got everything figured out. But first he needed to find the locations of the dungeons, since back in the game, all he had to do was click the stage and that teleported him to the dungeon, and he was sure that won't work anymore. And the best way to find out how to progress was to go through community forums. So he did, and immediately let out a scream after reading what was written there, startling everyone in the place. Well, turns out having summons doesn't mean anything because even if a person has an OP team, he can't just enter into a dungeon like that. There are certain conditions that need to be met. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward, so I'll keep it short. As for dungeons, they can spawn at any random location. There is no way of knowing their exact spawn location. As for how powerful that dungeon is, it's determined by how much energy is being emitted from the gate. That's where the government comes in. That also wants a cut of your hard work, because they are assholes who can. Which is why for new players, no matter how easy a dungeon is, they won't be allowed to enter until they are formally registered as a player by whatever organization that is forcefully controlling the possession of those dungeons. Hopefully that explains it, because our hero wasn't happy about any of this. Just then, he felt a tap on his shoulder. Turning around, he found our little Ramba, who despite not being allowed to speak, was hyping him up with those sparkling eyes of hers, assuring the kid she had his back no matter what is thrown at them. And it worked. Our boy's mood lifted a little, seeing how she was trying to cheer him on, so he thanked the girl for trying. Just then, he heard his phone ringing, cut to Ejin calling him to check on him, asking when he'd be back home since their mother was making dinner. Our hero told the girl he was going to grab something himself, but that wasn't important. There was something he wanted to ask her, and when she asked what, our hero asked if she knew he needed to pass a player registration test before he was allowed to enter a dungeon. Yeah, turns out she forgot to mention that earlier, but our hero was having a hard time believing that. Quickly changing subject, she explained to him what was going on. So apparently a lot of players lost their lives inside of dungeons, so the government had to step in. In the beginning it was total chaos, which is why now there are always some government officials standing guard outside the dungeon gates to make sure only registered people are entering that place. Yeah, that was all too troubling, since registering meant those people would have an eye on his every move and the dungeons he enters, so laying low won't be easy. But the girl wasn't done. She also told him about a ranking system, and that piqued our hero's curiosity. And when asked what it was, she explained it was a system that ranks players from all around the globe and is refreshed every year. As for their country, yeah, they don't even have a single player even in the global rankings. And the only way to change that was to find this Jainu guy, since she was sure their country's standing would skyrocket if that guy starts taking on these dungeons. After ending the call, the kid froze for a good 2 minutes, unsure what he was supposed to do. But in the end, he decided to just go with it and call it a night for now. Story cuts to the next morning, and his parents were getting ready to start their day. That's when his father saw something, a sight never in all his life was he expecting to see. And it was their good-for-nothing son who actually woke up early for the first time in his life, and that surprised both of them. As for his mother, she told him to have breakfast before heading out, but the kid told her he was fine, since he was in a hurry, so he'll just grab something to eat when he gets the time. And just before leaving, he suddenly stopped and called out to the two of them, and with a smiling face, he apologized for being such a failure his entire life and always showing them his shortcomings, and he thanked them for always being there for him. After saying what he wanted to say, he turned around and left, leaving both of them standing there in stunned silence. Breaking through the silence, his father complained how that idiot was making things so awkward for them, but his mother was more worried about his safety, so the man assured her not to worry since the government provides safety training for new summoners, and he suggested they eat breakfast and head out as well. We are told a little bit more about the current state of this country, so after the appearance of these summons and people suddenly becoming players, things began going downhill, and fast, because even though South Korea wasn't able to climb the ranking of the strongest players in the world, there was one ranking they most definitely dominated, and that was the highest mortality rate inside of dungeons. And the cause? People's delusions, or in simple terms, main character syndrome. Players began deluding themselves into thinking they were the protagonists of a fantasy world, resulting in them recklessly pushing through dungeons. And the result was pretty predictable. None of them returned. Cut to our hero, who was watching all that on his phone and was somewhat glad the government stepped in to stop these idiotic people from killing themselves. In the middle of all that, he heard the woman at the counter asking him to submit his papers, which he did and slid them through the hole in the glass. But he was curious about something, so he asked the woman how many player slots were available for the participants, and was surprised to hear only 50. And that was a big problem, since just in this building he saw at least 1,000 people gathered for the same thing as him. But whatever. If he can't even pass something like this, then he's got no business being here. The story cuts to a cafe, where a man was going through the forms of the participants who applied to be players, and he wasn't happy. And the reason was they needed as many talented people as possible, but the old guys at the top only gave them permission to approve 50 slots. As for his name, this here is Park Chang-sok, headquarters examiner. Just then, out of nowhere, an explosion rocked the entire building, sending everyone in a panic. Turning to the one responsible, he heard a man calling out his name. As the guy stepped out of the smoke, he saw a familiar figure. Turns out this man is a typical villain of this world who lost all his men by Chang's hand. And by lost, I mean they are gone, deleted. So he came looking for this man to take his revenge. But Chan wasn't planning on making it easy for him, so he summoned his own companions to stop this man before he caused any more damage to this place. In the midst of it all, a man was quietly watching YouTube on his phone. And I don't know which company's earbuds those are, but I want those. Because even with such a massive explosion going off around him, this man didn't even notice what was going on. And of course, it's our hero. Who else could be such a massive trouble magnet? Next chapter, and everyone was staring at the two powerhouses in amazement. Well, at least our boy was amazed. The rest of these people were shivering, fearing for their own lives. That's when our hero heard one of them assuring the others that the man before them is known as the Yaksha, a powerful summoner who crushes gangs. Yeah, our hero wasn't happy hearing that these thugs were actually using their summons to form gangs and cause trouble. As for the old man, he shouted for the rest to summon their creatures and activate their shields. People complied and turned on their bubbles. So did our boy, who summoned Ramba. But since the girl had no clue what was going on, she began processing the situation. Yeah, no, it was too much for her brain to handle. So she tried asking the kid, but was immediately cut off and reminded of what she promised, that she wasn't going to open her mouth outside. As for the scar-faced man, he mocked the man for still thinking about others when his own life was on the line, and he shouted for his orc summon to crush him. The creature complied and began charging in. By then, our boy had managed to find some cover and was sure if he tried to help that man, he would only get in his way. So he decided to just wait and watch for now. Fast forward, and the whole place was a mess with explosions going off everywhere, all because of a fire butterfly that was spamming fireballs at the incoming enemies. And then bam, another massive explosion rocked the building. But the orc before her was stronger than she had thought, since the guy rose from that blast like it was nothing, which made the scar-faced man even more cocky. Back with our hero, who was staring at both of them in utter disbelief, since these two so-called powerhouses were pathetically weak. Even Ramba was getting annoyed at this point, since she was forced to watch two rookies who had no idea what they were doing. Plus, the fact that a chatterbox like her can't say anything was frustrating her, so she ended up releasing that frustration on his hair. Just then, our hero heard some of the people in the building fearing that the old man might lose, since he was being pushed back. And if that happens, there was no way that Scarface Man was going to let any of them walk out of this place with their lives. Our boy knew he needed to do something fast, but the problem was his summons weren't strong enough to take on creatures like those at the moment. Yeah, watching how that orc was mercilessly hacking the opponent's summons, he was sure he was going to end up 6 feet under in just 2 days after waking from a coma at this rate. With no other choice, he walked up to the guy. Surprised, the guy asked what he wanted and heard the kid trying to coach a veteran like him, telling him he needed to time his attacks right. Turns out that Blood Orc was being buffed by another creature, and that creature was that eyeball that was giving the monster fire resistance, so fire attacks were useless against that guy. As for how he can tell when to attack, whenever that buff is applied, that orc's body turns red, so he just needed to time his attacks right. Realizing that thing was fireproof, he called out to Groot to step in and stop that monster. Seeing a plant-type summon stepping in, the thing changed tactics, which was exactly what the man was waiting for, and since he dropped his fireproof shield, he shouted for his fire turtle to burn that thing to a crisp. The creature complied, and boom, the massive orc got engulfed in a burst of fire. Turns out it worked, since he managed to deal a ton of damage to the monster with that one attack. Even the scar-faced man was shocked seeing how quickly the man managed to figure out his strategy, and that distraction cost him dearly, since at that very same instant, massive vines shot out of the ground, and their target was the eyeball summon, and the poor thing got crushed almost instantly. Following that, the fire-based creatures began hammering the remaining summons, and bam, the whole place lit up as fire started eating through all of them. With all his summons gone, the man's shield began to fade as well, and knowing full well what comes next, the fool began begging for mercy. He even promised to turn himself in and never repeat the same mistake. The old man's answer came in the form of more vines that tightly wrapped themselves around the guy's body. In the middle of all that, the guy heard the old man's voice reminding him what happens to gang members when they are caught. Yeah, seeing him raising that hand, the man knew exactly what was coming next. And damn, this was brutal. The guy didn't even flinch while delivering his punishment. Seeing that it was finally over, the rest of the people began cheering for the guy, but there was one man in the crowd who wasn't cheering, and it was our boy, who was left completely speechless after seeing what he just saw. Since when did criminals get executed on the spot? Plus, these people cheering like this was making him feel real uncomfortable. But then again, if that man was left alive, he was sure to break himself out of prison as soon as his summons were back to 100% and cause even more trouble. So it was understandable. Still, he realized if he wanted to survive in this new world, he would need to grow a pair himself and make decisions he normally wouldn't make, since if he hesitated, the other party won't hesitate in ending him. Just then, he saw the old man walking up to him to thank him for his assist back then, and he introduced himself as an examiner from the player headquarters. Our boy told the man it was nothing, but to the man it meant everything, since he saved his life back there. So he asked which guild he was from, since he wanted to reward him for his help, and was left shocked when he heard the kid claiming he didn't belong to any guild, and was here to register as a player, which was even more shocking, since he recognized a summons buff among tens of thousands of types at one glance, which wasn't something an ordinary player could do. But changing topics, he asked for the kid's identity card, since he just needed to verify his identity. Our hero didn't have a problem with that, so he showed the guy the thing. After which the man assured him that after a brief background check, they were going to issue him a fitting reward for his actions. All happy, our hero turned around and began walking out of the building. As soon as he was gone, the man brought out his phone and instructed whoever it was on the other end to find out everything he could about the guy whose data he had just sent. As for our hero, who was completely unaware of the kind of trouble he had just gotten himself into, he was happily making his way to the next place. Cut a couple of minutes, and he was seen holding a cream bread in his hand. And that thing was for the cutest little pixie in the whole world, as a thank you for not opening her mouth back then. Watching her devour it brought a smile to the kid's face, because this girl was nothing like the other summons, since with her, just one cream bread and everything is perfect. But quickly getting back on topic, he recalled what he saw back there, and how that man showed no hesitation when trying to harm others. And he was sure if it wasn't for his quick thinking, there was a really high chance none of the people trapped in that place would have walked out with their lives. Which is why he was planning to do whatever it takes to grow stronger and get his hands on as many summoning scrolls as possible, because he was in desperate need of stronger summons. But the first on his list were the training instructor and the dragon mage, since those two are D and E rank summons, which he could obtain from low-grade summoning scrolls. By then, Rampa was done, her stomach all puffed up like a balloon, and she happily flopped onto her back to digest the thing. But our boy refused to waste any more time, so he called out to the girl, since they were immediately heading out to start with the next step to the top. Cut back to the old man who was on the call with the same guy and was sweating after hearing what he managed to find out about him. So basically, he was surprised to hear that the kid had been in a coma for the past 3 years and only woke up recently. Plus, his accident happened around the same time their world turned upside down, and it made no sense as to how that man knew the creature's weakness. Not just that, according to the guy, he applied for player registration as soon as he was discharged. Sure enough, after going through the papers, he found our boy's application as well, and this confirmed it. That kid really was a complete newbie. After receiving the whole report, the old man thanked the guy and instructed him about this month's exam, which he would personally be overseeing. And no, the reason he was showing so much interest in the kid wasn't because he had suspected him of being the player everyone was looking for, but because, according to him, the kid possesses an extraordinary talent for adapting so fast to everything. Fast forward to the day of the test, and our hero finally arrived to get this first step over with. But still, the sight before him was completely unexpected, because even though he knew a lot of people were applying, this much was just absurd. Plus, he was sure there were even more people gathered on the test day than he saw during registration. But still, he wasn't even the least bit worried. After all, these guys couldn't even hold a candle to his 10 years of in-game experience. Just then, he heard this month's examiner walking up to the stage to start things off. Yup, it was that same old man who was responsible for their pre-written exam. Cut a couple of hours and both men were sitting in the cafeteria, without Hiro showing surprise seeing his face in this place. And obviously the man played it as nothing but a mere coincidence and changed topics to the lecture he gave during the whole process. And if he learned anything new from it, turns out that lecture at first seemed way too familiar. Although that was surprising, he didn't think much of it at first, but as the man kept going, he noticed it again. And it didn't take him long to realize the things that man was teaching all these people were the strategies he shared with the game community back in the day. And they were using all that without his permission. But to his face, he answered it wasn't too bad and was glad he got a chance to attend that lecture. Changing subjects, the man told the kid the main reason he called him to this place, which was to hand him the reward that he promised. But before that, there was something he wanted to ask. And when asked what, the man asked if by any chance he was a gamer. Yeah, the kid was completely lost at this point. So the man decided to explain to him what was going on. So basically, people who played this game before, regardless of how long they played, are called gamers. And this is only for the people who played it before the world turned over. Yeah, our hero didn't know what he was supposed to say to that. Plus, if he says no, it might cause trouble. Since how can someone who hasn't played this game before know about summon buffs? So in the end, he ended up confessing he did indeed play this game in the past. And when the overly excited man asked for how long, our hero fell into thought again. Because if he came out clean and say 10 years, that would make it too obvious. So in the end, he told the guy for about a year. And that somehow fired up the guy even more, because turns out this game was so trash that playing for a year was also a big deal. But since our hero still hadn't caught on to how weak these people were, he wondered if he downplayed it a little too much. Turns out it was the opposite, because having played this game for that long is apparently a really big deal. With that out of the way, the man apologized for his outburst and got to the main point, which is his reward. But there was a choice. First one being he uses his authority to grant him immediate player registration, plus provide him with immediate employment and secure him a position to work at headquarters. As for the second option, it's a 5 million won cash reward. Yeah, our boy could tell what the man wanted him to choose. The guy was also smirking, thinking to himself how that first offer was irresistible and other nonsense. That was until he heard our hero asking him for the money instead, and the dude went like, "Excuse you, kid. What did you just say?" Panicking, he reminded the kid that player registration will take a long time. Plus, he won't find a better job than this in the entire city. The answer was the same. Hand over the money. After he was done, he got up, and just before leaving, he made one thing clear to the guy. He wasn't planning on joining any organization, even if it was government-related, because he was a smart man who knows if he wants to succeed in life, he can't be wasting his time working for others. Fast forward, and he was seen standing before a gate, and this is part of his first practical test. He needed to enter that place and clear it. Plus, if he manages to do it fast enough, he will get extra points. As the woman was busy explaining to him the details, the old man was staring at the kid in confusion, since he never expected him to decline that offer. Plus, there was another thing bugging him about that kid. Turns out the answers he gave during the written exam were just out of this world. So much so that their professors, who were usually so arrogant and acting so proud and stuff, began shedding tears, seeing how much this person knew about the summons and different strategies of using them in combat. Back in the present, the guy was biting his nails, murmuring under his breath that he should have given him a better offer since that kid isn't the kind of person they can let anyone else get their hands on. By then, the woman was done, so she asked our hero to proceed to enter through the gate. Coming out of the other side, it was the same story, a new place. His shield activated, and they began scanning for any possible enemies lurking nearby. And yeah, this time there were indeed a lot of enemies lurking nearby. These here are slime-type monsters, which are highly toxic to the touch, and he was to defeat as many as he could and escape the dungeon as fast as possible. And since that was the case, Ramba and Harambe immediately got to work, buffing our little monkey with as many buffs as she could. Turns out this dungeon is more like a maze and is designed in a way that a player would need to defeat slime monsters scattered around the area to get to the boss, after which they need to find a way out of the place. And since it's a maze, a lot of players end up wasting their time getting lost along the way. But our hero wasn't one of those players. He knew exactly how to beat this place in as little time as possible, and that is by ignoring all the small fries and making a break for the main boss instead. and thanks to his in-game knowledge, he quickly managed to locate a path which was a shortcut that leads straight to the boss room. As soon as they walked through the place, a bunch of warning windows began blaring all around the kid, warning him of something dangerous. Yeah, no, turns out our hero was well acquainted with this danger, since this wasn't their first time meeting. Yep, a giant slime monster which he defeated countless times back in the game. Next chapter, and both his summons were charging in to take down the overgrown turd, and thanks to the boost Harambe received from Ramba, he leaped into the air, and boom, he smashed the hell out of the giant monster, causing the thing to be blown apart into chunks. But he wasn't done, and to our boy's amazement, the guy began hammering the monster with non-stop attacks at incredible speed, which was just insane for an F-rank monster. And seeing them having fun, our hero began smiling, as well as he wondered, what if that girl uses that same ability on some other summon? How OP would that be? Just then, he received a notification congratulating him on completing the dungeon. As for his time, it was 5 minutes and 32 seconds, which for our boy was pretty slow since back in the game he used to clear this whole maze in less than a minute. But then, in the middle of his thoughts, he saw another notification, which was to congratulate him on setting a new record for South Korea. Yeah, not just the test, but the whole ass South Korea. And as a reward, he received 3 high-grade summoning scrolls, which I'm pretty hyped about since that means new powerful summons. Story cuts to some other part of the city where the news of this reached someone. Yep, seems like officials from the bureau who were shocked to see someone manage to clear that dungeon in such a short amount of time. The woman asked the man to immediately pull the information about the person, since she wanted to know if this record was set by their country's #1 player. But nope, they saw a completely new face on the screen. And since she had no clue who he was, she asked her subordinate, who told the woman this kid wasn't a ranked player, so he has no idea either. Yeah, no, it was hard to believe for either of them that some unranked player just broke the world record on his very first try. Same thing in the bureau main office where the officials had gathered to discuss about the kid, and the woman was praising the old man for finding such a talented kid. Yup, the guy was basically sparkling like a proud father, since that kid was a national treasure, which is why he told the room they need to secure that kid no matter what it takes, or at the very least make sure some other country doesn't take him away from them first. So he proposed to the room they register that kid as a player immediately, which was surprising for the rest of them, since he was suggesting they bend all their rules to just give that kid his license. Old man reminded the guys how this time attack dungeons work. They are divided in 2 different rankings, first by country and second globally. The previous top ranker cleared that place at 6 minutes and 41 seconds, whereas the top ranked global spot is held by Rachel at 2 minutes and 25 seconds. And this kid surpassed the top ranked Korean time, so there was no need to put him through a player match, since that would be meaningless. Plus, he believes that people with talent should be given special privileges. Cut to our hero who was still trying to wrap his head around just how weak the players of their country really were for them to be considering this time to be the best record in their country. Just then, he heard someone call out to him. So he turned around and found the old man running at him with whatever that fanboy face he was making, which was the last thing our boy needed right now. Catching his breath, he told the kid he saw his attack record and praised him for it, while asking how he pulled it off on his first try. Our boy didn't really know how to answer that question, given the fact he was probably the only guy on the planet who challenged that thing the most number of times. Lucky for him, the guy didn't wait for his answer, and reached out a card for him, and when the kid asked what it was, the man told him that was his player license. And when asked the reason for doing this, the man told the kid he has nothing left to prove after setting that record. So putting him through all that process was pointless. In the middle of that, the man suddenly asked if he could share the strategy he used to beat that record, and that question once again threw him into thought, because the decision he makes right now could affect his whole life and the lives of his family. Because for one, using that knowledge, their country would soar through the rankings in no time, which would bring him a lot of fame and money and other stuff that comes with it, which was the best case scenario. But on the other hand, there was also a chance he might get kidnapped by some gang who would beat all his strategies and secrets out of him. Yeah, given the condition of their country, he wasn't planning on taking that risk, so he asked the man if he even realizes how rude he was being, asking him to share his secrets with him just because they know each other a little. Yeah, the man knew the kid was right. After all, that's highly sensitive information for a player, so he apologized. But still, he asked our hero to understand because South Korea was in desperate need of talents like him. That answer made our hero pause for a moment, since from what he could tell so far, this guy doesn't seem like a bad person. Plus, he delivered the promised money right away and his personality was also okay. And since he was so desperate, our hero decided to capitalize on the situation and instead use the government to his advantage to grow even faster. With that in mind, he suggested they take this conversation to another place where they could talk in private. Cut a bit, and they were now in a cafe, with the man getting straight to the point, telling the kid they were in need of the knowledge he carries. In the middle of speaking, he confessed to the kid that they ran a background check on him and found out he had been in a coma for 3 years and just recently woke up. Yeah, he wasn't happy hearing those words. The man apologized and told the kid they had no other choice, since highly skilled unregistered players could be part of a syndicate, so they had to do it for public safety. Yeah, no, that didn't sit right with our boy. And since he was now registered, he suggested they refrain from repeating that same thing. Changing topics, he asked the man what he was going to get in return for helping the government, and the answer was his cooperation. And that surprised the kid, since he was expecting money or other stuff. But the man assured him his cooperation was more valuable than anything else, since he holds a really high position at the headquarters. And with his help, if he does a good job, he might even receive more votes from the public to rise even higher in the ranks, which would in turn benefit him as well. Therefore, he promised to provide him with all possible support within his authority. No, our boy wasn't convinced, and there were several reasons for that. First one, the compensation is vague. Second, him being a public official meant he can't use funds as he pleases, which is also a problem for him. So after thinking it over, he came to a decision, which is to give him 1 month to prove his worth. Surprised, the guy asked what he was trying to say, and heard the kid reminding the man he was a new player, so he needs support to grow his strength. So he was giving him 1 month to prove he can deliver. And if he likes the results, he will continue to work with him. But if not, he'll just give him information about the game equal to the value of help he provides. Yeah, the man knew exactly what the kid was saying. He wanted to use him as his personal assistant for a month, but he also knew he had no other choice, so he accepted that condition. That was good and all, but there were several conditions our hero set. First one being, he doesn't want his record-breaking time news spreading anywhere or any other achievements he makes. And the reason was he was worried about his safety. The man tried saying the government would take care of him and his family's safety, but then he remembered how incompetent they were. After all, they weren't even able to handle one gang. And if this kid hadn't shown up that day, things would have gone a lot worse. And keeping a talent like this safe from prying eyes was impossible for them, so he agreed to his condition. But he did point out that completely keeping things under wraps would be hard for them. Yeah, that was no big deal, since a little bit of info leak wasn't a problem for our hero, so he got ready to leave. And with that out of the way, all that was left is to look at the rewards he got earlier. After a while, he was going through his system window and noticed how insane the rewards were, especially those 3 high-grade summoning scrolls. But still, he wasn't sure if he should use those, since with just 3, a chance of getting something good was really low. So he figured he should just sell them and buy low-grade scrolls instead. Just then, he remembered about the app that lets registered players buy and sell stuff online. And yeah, it was something that the old man made him download on his phone, since according to him, this was an extremely useful thing. So to see if what he said was really true, our boy fired up the thing and was immediately left wide-eyed after seeing what was on the screen. Because a single one of those high-grade summoning scrolls was worth 3 million won, which was just absurd, which would also mean he just made 9 million won by running a dungeon for 5 minutes. And if that was the case, then he could only imagine how much money he was going to pull after completing a bunch of high-ranked dungeon runs. But first things first, sell these 3 and buy low-grade scrolls with that money. Since that training instructor and dragon mage were still on his top priority list, since they could easily outperform even a B-rank summon. But strangely, as he began browsing for low-grade scrolls, he noticed that there were literally thousands of those listed. But despite that, their price was 5,000, which according to him was on the high end, given the fact that there were more sellers than buyers. With no other choice, he decided to give a call to the only person he knew who could help him in situations like these, and it was his sister. So he gave her a call to ask what was going on with the prices of these scrolls and why were so many being sold. With that, they went into a whole 5-minute explanation of what he was trying to do. Turns out for those low-grade scrolls, the headquarters is the largest buyer. Surprised, the kid asked the reason, since it makes no sense for them to waste so much money on that stuff. Ajin wasn't really sure herself, but it was something about supporting rankers or something. She explained they use national taxes to buy those things, with the minimum price being 5,000 won, and the amount they buy each day is fixed. And since players can just sell them to the headquarters instead of lowering the price, people just hold on to them and sell them to the headquarters as soon as it's their turn. But she was sure this is going to end very soon. Once again, our hero asked the reason and how she could be so sure about that. Turns out this policy was from the earlier days, but now since people don't really need low-grade summons anymore, the scrolls just keep piling up over time, which was perfect for our hero. So he thanked the girl for the info, and with this new information in hand, he decided to give a call to a good friend of his. Yep, the old man, who was happy seeing that the kid wasn't able to stay even a day away from him, and seeing him so excited was making our boy uncomfortable. After all the greetings and stuff, the man asked the reason for this call, and was left surprised hearing he needed low-grade summoning scrolls, because those things were practically worthless, and he asked if he was sure he didn't need mid or high-grade ones instead. Our hero answered no, so he asked the amount. Turns out there is no limit, as many as he can get him would do. The old man fell into thought for a moment since he wasn't sure how to approach this request, because it was true they get 50,000 of those every day, so giving them away wouldn't be that big of an issue. But what's the fun in that? So he told the kid he was willing to give them as many as he needs, but he can't resell them to anyone. Our hero assured the guy he has no such intentions. Yeah, now he was sure the kid was cooking something, and he wanted to know what. After all, a talented young man like him going out of his way to collect low-grade summoning scrolls had something suspicious written all over it. And since that was the case, he placed a condition. Our hero asked what he wanted, and heard the guy ask for some useful piece of information in exchange for his cooperation. And the reason was he was an examiner elected by the people, so if he got caught giving away summoning scrolls bought by taxes, he would lose the people's trust. So this was just his insurance in case he was questioned by his superiors. Although our hero was somewhat surprised, he wasn't complaining, since this was better because this way they were trading instead of him asking the man for a favor. So he told the guy about something called achievement time shaving. He reminded him how the rewards for the natural first place achievement is set to 3 high-grade summoning scrolls per dungeon. However, this reward can be obtained again if another player breaks the record. So if players take turns breaking the record by 1 second, they can maximize the rewards they get. And in this way, their country's national power would skyrocket by collecting as many rewards from dungeons as possible. Turns out they were already aware of that method. Although not surprised, it was a bummer for our hero. So instead, he prepared to tell him how to clear that maze dungeon in the least amount of time. Yeah, that was music to the man's ears. So he asked if he was going to share his personal method he used. Well, technically no, because he has no method. He was such a grinder back then that he memorized that whole maze. Instead, he was planning on giving him the technique the 5 emperors used in the game. And he was sure he could even clear that dungeon in 3 minutes time, which was even better for the guy. But before that, he suggested they settle on the price for the information. And his demand was, along with the low-grade summoning scrolls they agreed upon, he also needs 50 high-grade summoning scrolls. Yeah, the kid was asking for 150 million, which was just absurd. But according to the kid, he was actually underselling it. He told the guy the method he was about to share works from low to all the way to top-tier dungeons, meaning just the clear rewards from those would be worth billions. Yeah, no, the old man wasn't really sure about that. But still, he decided to take a gamble and told the kid if that information proved to be correct, he would immediately deposit 150 million won into his account and provide him with 10,000 low-grade scrolls every day. Next chapter, and the man was seen standing in front of his subordinates, who asked the reason for this sudden summon to this place. Well, it was to test what he learned from our hero and see if the information was really accurate. But to the guys, he told them it was regarding the dungeon record that was recently broken. Apparently, he got his hands on a technique from unknown sources to clear that dungeon in the least amount of time, so he needed all their help in testing it. According to what our boys shared with the man, the key summon for clearing this dungeon is this little guy, which may not seem like a very impressive summon at first glance, but there is more to this thing than meets the eye. Well, for one, it's a durable summon and has decent attack power, making it your typical bruiser. Well, at least that's the generally known information. But in practice, as it's B rank, it's not easy to raise, and compared to other B ranks, its damage and tanking are both mediocre, making it a summon often treated as a dud. However, what players don't know about this creature is its terrifying predatory nature. The spotted Komodo's primary diet is giant slime monsters, meaning simply release it in the dungeon, allow it to hunt giant slimes, and sit back and enjoy the show. Cut a couple of hours and all the officials were seen running into the building with their new best times. Not just that, they were sure if they equipped a movement speed rune on this little guy, they might even be able to challenge the world record. Story fast forwards a few days, and news about South Korea breaking record after record in dungeons was making waves all over the world. And since that was the case, it meant it was time to hold his part of the deal as well. But first, he needed his own people around that kid to make sure he didn't get himself into any trouble. So he decided to make a 4-man team, including our hero and the 3 people he chose. Well, I can only see one promising candidate on that desk, but I won't say who. Take a guess. Cut to our boy in his shaky hands who was staring at his phone in utter disbelief because he was still having a hard time believing those numbers on his bank account were really real. So was our little Pixie, who was drooling just imagining how many cream buns she could buy with that kind of money. Quickly composing himself, he opened his system window to check the most important thing, and sure enough, 10,000 summoning scrolls were sitting in his inventory. Yeah, turns out it was a good idea to work with that guy after all. And since he kept his promise, it was now time for him to do his part as well. So he called out to Ramba, telling the girl to get ready, because it was finally time to initiate their ultimate secret technique before opening the scrolls to maximize their luck. And that technique apparently involved praying as hard and as seriously as possible to God for him to bless them so they could get something good from the polls. I mean, sure, I can relate to that. Okay, so with that out of the way, our boy summoned his first scroll and began his endless grind in search of his ultimate summons. Yeah, no, after a while he was seen lying on the ground completely spent and surrounded by the most useless Pokemon in the game. Apparently, he opened 3,600 scrolls in an hour, and all he got was F-rank summons. Just as he was about to lose hope, he heard Ramba's voice, who was calling him an idiot. And no, it wasn't encouragement. She was scolding him for being such an idiot, for thinking it was going to be that easy to pull an EX rank summon. Yeah, our hero reminded her she came out on his very first try. Yeah, that answer annoyed the girl, since he was saying like she was cheap and easy to pull. She told the kid in order to pull an EX rank summon, 10,000 scrolls wouldn't be enough, let alone 100,000. Surprised, the kid asked how she could be so sure about that. Yeah, turns out even wasting 10 years on this game, he had no clue how the summoning system worked. She explained that the total number of each kind of summons is exactly 10% of the number of players, meaning if there are 8 billion people, there are 800 million of those horned caterpillars he just pulled. And that's where things start to get tricky. Since she, along with the other EX rank summons, have isolated status, it meant there is only one of each of them. Yeah, no, turns out the kid was dealing with impossible odds here. At least it wasn't all bad, since from what she could tell, only he in the entire world has the ability to pull EX rank summons. So at least he didn't need to worry about someone else getting their hands on those summons before him. Yeah, this was a problem, because after doing his math, he realized there are tens of thousands of different types of summons, and each one of those further have 800 million copies, and he was supposed to pull one-of-a-kind EX rank out of all that. Well, it turns out winning a lottery back-to-back had better odds than this, so he just gave up. But lucky for him, he had his little Pixie there to cheer him up. Since it wasn't all that bad, if he pulls one summon, it won't appear again unless he sells it. For example, if he manages to pull all the horned caterpillars, there won't be any more of those to summon anymore, thus increasing his odds of getting something different next time. Yeah, that didn't change the fact that it was still going to be difficult, if not impossible. At the time, he considered changing his approach and going for mid-grade scrolls instead, but quickly dropped that idea since that's too inefficient, plus those things are expensive and hard to come across, which meant he has no other choice but to keep going with his current plan and hope he manages to get something good. And of course, he'll be needing Ramba's prayers as well to boost his luck and keep him going. Next chapter, and both of them were seen dropped on the bed after pulling an all-nighter trying to pull something good from those scrolls. But their luck was so terrible that not even a single one of the summons was worth it. Oh damn. Turns out 2 weeks had passed at this point, and he ripped through 140,000 scrolls during this time. And our poor little Ramba almost lost her life multiple times in multiple ways during the whole process. Well, turns out a lot happened in the past 2 weeks. Our boy rented his own place using the money he got from the old man, because he didn't want to draw attention towards him by his parents because of a room filled to the brim with scrolls. But the grind wasn't over, so he sat back up, and deciding to do something new today, he told our exhausted little Ramba that they were heading to the synthesis shop today to get her powered up. Fast forward to the synthesis shop, and inside the place was packed with players who came here to level up their summons, and in a corner was our boy who was receiving his ticket number for his turn. But just to be on the safe side, Ramba reminded the kid to double-check before hitting the synthesis button, since she didn't want to get accidentally deleted during the process. After a while, both of them were standing inside the room with our boy adding his useless summons to grind them into experience for Ramba. And the happy little Pixie, all excited about the whole thing, began flying towards the machine. I'm guessing these are the summons he chose to be leveled up, because if not, we might lose our Harambe here. Well, I only see Ramba in the place who is about to receive the experience. So yeah. Well, anyway, our boy hit the button. The room filled with dazzling lights with sparkles flying everywhere, as all those summons got absorbed into Ramba, and before long they saw a notification informing them that the process was a success. And bam, Ramba, now level 21, with her intelligence increased by 1 point, which I'm not sure is something to brag about. As for our hero, he was clapping on the outside, but on the inside, he wasn't able to believe he just burned through so many summons, and that stupid girl only reached level 21. But at least Ramba was totally hyped about the whole thing, so that's a win, I guess. Cut a few days, and we are now at the main bureau office, and of course our old man was all happy, like always, and in front of him was a man by the name of Byung-jin, who wasn't really sure why the man was acting in such a way. Well, the answer was our hero, since he was sure that kid was making steady progress, all thanks to all those scrolls he had been sneaking him. Curious, he asked Jin what was that kid up to these days, and was surprised hearing that he was still busy opening summoning scrolls. Not just that, but he was so addicted to gambling now that he was even asking to buy more scrolls using his own money, the same 150 million he received as a reward from him. But he did point out he was looking for a discount and asked what they should do, since after handing out so many of those scrolls, even the bureau was starting to give them looks. Yeah, the man knew this could get ugly if he didn't put a stop to it soon. But then again, knowing that kid, he was sure he was probably planning something big, so in the end, he instructed Jin to sell them as many as he wants on half the price. By now, even Jin was starting to get worried about his job, so he asked the man to reconsider. But our old man had made up his mind, and yeah, the reason was his own promotion because he was certain that soon that kid was going to become a hero of their country. And when that happens, people would find out it was him who supported that kid when he was nothing, and he was able to reach that level, resulting in him gaining even more public support. And because of that, he instructed Jin to just keep things as they are running for now. But of course, this whole matter stays between the two of them and their third member by the name of Tae-soap. Cut to our boy who looked all shriveled up after ripping through all those scrolls, Right alongside him, our little Ramba was rubbing her hands non-stop to try and boost their luck, and she was asking for how much longer they have to keep doing this, since she was sure her hands were about to fall off. And our hero answered, "Until either one of us dies." Just then, they heard a voice calling out to them, so both of them turned to see who it was. Well, turns out, it's that same female member the old man selected to be part of their team, and her name is Tae-seo. Hearing that she was from the headquarters, our hero got up to properly greet the beautiful lady and asked the reason for the visit. Well, it was regarding his request of buying those summoning scrolls, so she came to discuss with him the terms. That was good and all, but our hero reminded the woman about the request he made about getting a little discount on the price of those items. Turns out they did already have a meeting about that matter, and considering his recent contribution, they decided to sell him those things for half the price. Yeah, the woman literally seemed like an angel in our boy's eyes at that point. But that wasn't all. There was even more good news for him. Apparently, their team has decided to support him with an additional 100 million won under the talent management expenses category. But of course, he would need to keep this part a secret from everyone. Yeah, lady, don't worry about a thing. Just hand him the cash. And just to be clear, she reminded our hero the reason they were supporting him so much was to build a good relationship between the two of them. Yeah, our boy understood perfectly. After she was done speaking, the woman got ready to leave him to his scroll ripping. Our boy thanked the woman. And seeing how much that old man was going out of his way to help him, our boy got all motivated to pull the 2 summons he needs as soon as possible to repay that man's generosity. Story cuts to the night. And yeah, same story, no luck. They ripped countless scrolls at this point, but not a single one of the summons was useful. And right behind them, a literal army of useless summons. By now, Rumba was done and was fully ready to end it all, because now even the sound of those things tearing was making her neurotic. Our boy knew the girl was right. At this point, they were just wasting their time on these low-level scrolls, but he also knew he has no other choice. He couldn't back down after coming so far. And then it finally happened. He tore a scroll. It began emitting light, and bam, just like how it happened with Rumba, electricity began shooting out of those pieces of paper. As for the two, both of them stared at the scene with their jaws hanging, wondering if all those days spent grinding finally paid off. Next panel, and he finally saw the notification window he had been dying to see this whole time, his very own EX-ranked Dragon Mage. Yeah, both of them legit began crying at the sight, especially Ramba, since the nightmare was finally over. Our boy himself was ready to finally die in peace right there. But there was no time to celebrate just yet, and the reason was this was his gotcha moment. But since our little Pixie had no idea what this gotcha moment was, our hero shouted, telling the girl, once you get one good pull, you keep going because there is a really high chance of getting another one. Holy, that actually worked. The very next scroll gave him the second summon he was looking for. His X-ranked training instructor. Yeah, this was it. His life was finally set as tears of pure happiness began running down his cheeks. Cutting through the silence, he heard instructor's voice asking where he was and how he got here. But instead of explaining things to the man, our boy was grinning to himself, recalling his specialty. Well, apparently he is just an E-rank summon with weak combat ability. But what sets him apart is that he's a full-on training maniac, completely obsessed with training. Although he himself is weak and his basic skills are nothing special, he can grow his other summons through training. Plus, once he is high enough level, he unlocks a skill called the Instructor, which unlocks a summon's hidden potential, drastically increasing their growth speed. Yeah, no, I'm starting to not like this idea of unlocking Ramba's hidden potential. I like her better as a cute little pixie. Yeah, same thing for the girl. Unlike the sparkling fool besides her, she was seriously against this whole thing. Okay, that's enough for his explanation. Our boy finally called out to the guy by his in-game name, which was Hongyu, and that surprised the guy since there is only one guy who used to call him by that name. And both of them realized the one standing before them was none other than their Jinu. Realizing this, the guy immediately knelt in front of our hero to show his respect. And he was the same story as Ramba since he got dragged into isolation for unknown reasons and was relieved to finally seeing our boy's face. That is when he heard the girl's voice, who was also walking up to him. And still unable to believe if this was real or not, she asked if he really was Jai Nu. Our boy answered yes and was surprised by how sweet that girl's voice was, since this was his first time hearing her speak. As for her details, she is a D-rank mage. So basically she is a mage dropout, but unlike other mages, she is quite special due to the fact that she has a literal ancient explosive dragon sleeping inside of her heart, making her a powerful fire attribute damage dealer. As for her skill on its own, it's pretty mediocre. But once his trainer awakens his special skill and unlocks her hidden potential, things change completely, because that skill evolves into a new skill called Predation, which is an extremely broken skill that permanently increases in damage each time a boss-level enemy is defeated using it. Okay, back in the present, the sparkly girl was telling our boy how much she missed him and was glad to see him again. And this fool was actually beginning to fall for his own summon after hearing those words. But getting back on topic, he instructed both of them to refrain from speaking when other people are around. Although they had no clue what that was about, they decided to just do as they were being told for now. As for the two, they finally decided to call it a night and get some sleep. Cut to the apartment, and our boy was seen sound asleep, trying to recover from the trauma of ripping thousands of those scrolls over the past few days. And right next to his bed were his 3 summons. Cutting through the silence, both of them greeted little Ramba, and since the girl herself was super happy seeing them again, she greeted them back, but of course, she did make one thing clear, that since she was the very first summon Jinyu pulled, that makes her their senior. Hongyu had no problem with that. However, that didn't mean he was going to take orders from her, since that meant nothing to him. And he had only one thing to say to both of them. They were all weak as hell in their current state, which is why he was planning to change things around here so they could be useful to their master. And yes, that includes training tirelessly, even when their lord is sleeping. So he pointed at Pakryong and gave her her training task for the night, which is to sit and focus on sensing mana for now, since he was still a long way from awakening his own skill, meaning they still have time before he can help unlock her predation skill. Second up was Ramba. Yeah, that look alone was enough to scare the poor thing senseless, and it was just as she had feared. She needed to go through strength training since she had to increase her swinging speed. Seeing her making that face, he asked if she was saying she didn't want to help their lord. Yeah, she had no answer to that. So Hongyu told the girl to pick up that frying pan from the kitchen and start swinging. But considering this is her first day, he decided to go easy on her. Yeah, by easy he meant 5,000 swings. Before she could say anything, the guy was already dragging her away to the other room so as not to disturb their lord while he rested. Cut to the next day, and the old man ran into some problems in his office. Apparently, the bureau refused to give him any more scrolls, and this was an order from the headquarters director. Yeah, this was bad for the man. But one thing that was bugging him more was why was a busy man like the director suddenly paying attention to such trivial matters. Plus, they were demanding a detailed explanation of where the low-grade summoning scrolls were going. According to the girl, this was all the doing of someone by the name of Im Hee-soo. Yeah, everything was starting to make sense to the old man now, since that bastard had been at his throat for a while now, but Taeseo knew there was no use dwelling over it for now. As for the explanation, she already prepared one to be handed out, but that doesn't fix their problem of not being able to get any more scrolls for the kid. Man knew she was right. Instead of complaining, he should be thinking of ways of getting more scrolls, since the delivery date for the next batch was almost here. Just then, he heard his phone ringing. Seeing him making that face, the girl asked if everything was alright. Apparently, they don't need to provide the kid with any more low-grade summoning scrolls, which means they can fully focus on this Im Hee-soo and make him pay for trying to screw them over. The story cuts to the Swanoxen Mountain, and our hero was seen staring at a normal dungeon gate in the distance. As for what a normal dungeon is, so basically, there are 4 types of dungeons. First one being normal, then Tower of Trials, third daily dungeon, and finally, Chaos Dungeon. Pretty straightforward. Normal dungeons are the easiest, then the daily dungeon, same thing, no big deal. After that comes Tower of Trials. That's where things begin to get tricky, because the difficulty of that thing is hellish compared to the other 2 dungeons, but the rewards from that place are totally worth it. Well, the mortality rate is equally high. So, yeah. Then comes the Chaos Dungeon, which is basically a raid boss that people can challenge by forming a party. And yes, just like the previous dungeon, extremely dangerous. Back with our hero, who was going through the player app on his phone, and noticed a lot of people were sending out requests for either joining or recruiting for parties to challenge these dangerous places. But he, on the other hand, thanks to his knowledge, wasn't really in a rush to find any party members for now. Just then, he came across the gate leading to the place. And this one was a special case, since this one hadn't been cleared yet. So he was here to take care of it quickly. Because like any other story, this world also has dungeon breaks with monsters spilling out if not taken care of in time. Seeing him walking up, the man asked for his player card. Our hero brought it out and showed him the thing, after which he was allowed to enter through the gate. After stepping through the thing, the kid was left speechless at the sight, because he recognized the place to be a subjugation dungeon, which I have no idea what it is. So let's just go with the story and find out what's all this about. Next chapter. And there was a whole ass war going on with an army of orcs trying to scale the walls to get to the humans. And yes, it was brutal, which was quite unsettling for our hero, since back in the game it was nothing like this. But now everything was so real. But since there was no time to lose, he got ready to finish this quickly, and began summoning his team. And bam! Whoa, I see 2 fairies now. And why does Harambe's fur look red here? Wait, hell no, that's not Harambe. That's a new monkey he unlocked from those scrolls. Both of these are D-rank summons. Well, fuck. RIP Harambe. Turns out the kid sacrificed him for experience, and I even gave him a nickname. This is so sad. Please press F in the comments to pay respect to the MVP. Well, it is what it is. Our hero instructed Ramba to start applying buffs to the summons, while Pokrion was to provide them with cover fire from the rear. As for the new Kong, he was to go straight for the Orc King. The monkey did as told and leaped all the way to the back of the army, where the main boss was standing, and boom, crashed right in front of the guy, causing a massive explosion. Well, turns out that was just his entrance. He didn't attack the guy. As for why our boy was targeting him, it's simple. Take out the leader, and you win the war. But not like the creature was going to make it easy for them. So he raised his blade, and boom, brought it down with full force right on Harambe 2.0. But thanks to the buffs he received from the two Pixies, he managed to stop the attack. With that guy distracted, Ramba stacked her buffs on Hungyu, and the guy ended up becoming so fast that he literally turned into a flash of light as he carved through the army of orcs in an instant, which even surprised our boy, since unlike the game, he was even more OP after becoming an EX rank. Not like he was complaining. With his new team, he was sure this dungeon was going to be a piece of cake. Well, mostly because of his two Pixies, since one was boosting his summon speeds while the second one was applying healing effects, and because of that, Harambe was ripping through anything that came in his path. I don't know this guy's name, but he was taking this whole thing a whole lot seriously, unlike our little troublemaker who was taunting all the orcs on the ground, resulting in them throwing all their weapons at the girl, which almost chomped off our boy's head, who shouted for the girl to stop messing around and take this fight seriously. As for the powerhouse, she was almost ready to cast her ultimate spell. And bam, she launched the thing, and a dragon made out of fire got shot out of her staff, going straight for the orcs on the ground, resulting in all of them getting engulfed in flames as they screamed in pain. This even scared the Orc King, since his whole army was being wiped out right before his eyes. And using that distraction, Hungyu swooped in with his blade, and damn, the guy didn't even flinch. And the next thing everyone saw was the head of the giant monster rolling on the ground. Just like that, the dungeon was cleared, and all that experience from those monsters began to be distributed among all the participating summons. Pakyong got to level 5. As for our instructor, who was busy aura farming in the middle of leveling up, he also gained 5 levels. As for the dungeon rewards, our hero got an intermediate grade summoning scroll, which was worth 500,000 won. And seeing how he managed to make all that cash in under 3 minutes, he assembled all of them to head to their next dungeon to level them up and turn his life around with endless grind. Story cuts a few days to the bureau, and inside, our old man was being scolded for doing something completely dumb, and the one scolding him was our mommy Taisio, who couldn't believe where he got so much confidence to do something so stupid. As for what that thing was, we'll need to go back a few days to the time the old man went to confront the man responsible for fucking things up for him. As for his excuse, he merely offered some advice to the superiors, since he was sure the old man was wasting their budget. Plus, he didn't forget to land a jab by pointing out how he has never properly raised a single talent during his whole career, because none of his picks ever made it as a national representative. Yeah, that was definitely a sting. He asked if perhaps he was being full of himself just because they managed to set some records in those dungeons recently, so he decided to blow their entire budget. Although the old man wanted to fire back, he knew he couldn't, since this man has already raised countless talents over the years that got selected as national representatives. But this time, he also got his hands on such a talent. So he asked the man what was he willing to bet if the talent he was raising has what it takes to get selected as a national representative. The guy reminded the man there were only 10 spots available for national representative players, so he was proposing a bet to see whose talent climbs to a higher rank, a challenge the old man happily agreed to. But of course, there was a condition. The loser has to publicly admit that the other examiner is better and resign. And the penalty for breaking the deal was 1 billion won. Well, fuck. No wonder the girl was so mad at the old man. He's dumb. Back in the present, she was seen asking if he really believes so much in this kid that he even put his own position on the line. Plus, she was sure he was still new to all this and lacked in many areas compared to the current recorded rankers. Old man agreed with that, since she wasn't wrong there. But still, he believed in that kid and was sure if they keep supporting him properly, he'll definitely provide them with major information. Before she could say anything, they heard Hungyu's panicked voice calling out to the two. Surprised, both of them turned to ask what had him so spooked. Turned out it was something about a guy who had been steamrolling his way through D-rank dungeons recently. And yup, it was our hero. And that part shocked both of them, especially the girl, since a player who registered barely a month ago was clearing D-rank dungeons solo and in record time. That was just ridiculous. That's when her attention got drawn towards the giggling old man. And out of nowhere, he began laughing like a maniac, commenting on how their Jinwoo was the bomb. Cut to our boy, who was in the middle of his favorite activity of the day. That was to stare at his bank balance. Apparently, he had been grinding really hard for the past few days, and managed to make a whopping 16 million won. And saying working hard might be an understatement, since the guy ran 160 D-rank dungeons in just the past 4 days. And this pile of cash is what he managed to pull in after selling just the intermediate summoning scrolls. And thanks to all his blood, sweat, and tears, here he is finally making 6 figures a month to give his family a better life. Yeah, no, Rambo was pretty sure they were the ones who sweated out there, not him. Ignoring her, he got ready to create new accounts to split the money properly. First one being the expenses account for rent, utility bills, and food and stuff. Second was a family account. Man, why is he imagining the 3 of them like that? Damn, that's kind of funny. Well anyway, finally the savings account where he was going to be saving 10 million each month and use it on himself. Wait, no, there was also a fourth account called the player account, where he would set aside the money which he would spend on his summons. After all, the stronger they are, the richer he gets. Apparently all of them have reached or passed level 30 after all those dungeon runs, so now it was about time to start equipping some runes and upgrading them, and for that, daily dungeons were his best option, but he needed to cut his time inside of those places to cover as many dungeons as possible, so he would need something called a core summon for that. So he decided to check the shop to see if anyone was selling those. Yeah, the moment he saw the price tag on those things, his whole face went pale, because just the C rank of those creatures was averaging at 20 million. Oh, that wasn't even the best part. For B rank, he needed 200 million, and A and S ranks weren't even listed in the market. Yeah, that was pretty frustrating since he didn't have that kind of cash to blow on core summons. But luckily, he had a backup plan. Cut to the bureau where the glasses guy was seen running into the old man's office in panic. Not even looking up, the guy asked what he wanted, and immediately jolted to his feet after hearing that the kids sent them a new request. Yeah, not sure how to describe this moment, but yeah, he wanted to know what was he asking for this time. The man showed him his phone that had the list of items the kid was asking for. Yeah, the moment he saw what it was, his eyeballs nearly popped out of his eye sockets because that was just absurd. Plus, he wasn't even sure that the headquarters would approve buying all this stuff, so he asked what he was planning on giving them in return. And immediately got wide-eyed hearing he was offering to share the secrets for clearing daily dungeons in the shortest amount of time, and this time not just one type of dungeon but all of them. Yeah, that was an offer hard to refuse, so he fell into thought for a moment and in the end ended up agreeing to his conditions, but of course he would need to talk with their director first to ask for permission. Next panel, and the guy was pulling at his hair because that old man refused to even listen to what he had to say after seeing that list. Seeing him making a fuss, Jin asked Taesup if she knows what's going on, so the girl told him the whole story. But still, she was happy seeing that she was working with an examiner with such passion. As for Jin, he asked what the director specifically said. Well, turns out he didn't exactly say no. He asked him to bring evidence first that what the kid was saying was really valid. And that was the most frustrating part, since how on earth was that kid supposed to clear those dungeons and show proof without the summons he asked for? Taeseop was also starting to get interested in that offer, since if they managed to acquire that knowledge, that would be a massive deal for them. Yeah, that was exactly what the old man was saying. This was an absolute jackpot. But then the girl said something that froze the old man for a moment. She reminded the guy selling such valuable information to the headquarters for mere 1.3 billion seems a bit low, and since those guys refused to help them out here, she offered to pay that whole amount instead. Well, it turns out the woman standing before him is no ordinary salary worker. She is actually from the Darsung Group family, South Korea's top conglomerate, or in simple words, mommy is loaded. Turns out she grew up receiving the elite chaebol education of Darsung, but she was never interested in that stuff. She was more into players than in management rights, which is why the player she finds most interesting lately is of course our boy, since he possesses an unbelievable amount of information for a beginner, so much so that even the government is interested in him. So her plan was to create a one-man management team entirely for him, use their money to invest in the kid so he can fully utilize his information, and in the end, they can split the profits equally. Although that was a solid plan, the old man still asked the girl if she would be fine. After all, that's a large amount of money they are talking about here. To which the girl asked if he was really worried about her bank balance. Yeah, no, she was right there. She assured the men money wasn't an issue here, but before that, she wanted to have another meeting with the kid. Next chapter, and the woman was seen sitting in some hotel waiting for our boy to arrive. That is when she heard the door to her private room opening and spotted our boy walking in. Apparently, our hero had been doing his homework on the people he was working with as well, but still he wasn't able to believe his eyes when he arrived outside this high-end restaurant that puts 5-star hotels to shame. Plus, the treatment he received after the people working in this place heard he was here to meet up with this girl was just insane. Just then, he heard the girl's voice calling his name. Looking up, he spotted her already waiting for him in the room. Yeah, turns out he went and checked into her, and finding her details wasn't too hard, considering the fact she is an absolute beauty that can easily pass as a model any day, and a third-generation chaebol of a rich family that pretty much owns everything. But still, he was surprised that the old man didn't come for this meeting. So the woman clarified today's meeting wasn't regarding the headquarters. After a while, she was telling him the whole story, how the headquarters won't be able to provide him any further support and other stuff, because even though she along with the old man wanted to help him as much as possible, many people are beginning to oppose that idea. Well, it turns out that was no big deal for our boy since he made it to the top without any support last time, so he can do it again. But before he could say anything, he heard the woman proposing something, and when our boy asked what, she told him about a private management agency she was planning on establishing just for him. Well, apparently that did sound really appealing to our boy, because unlike the headquarters which has to act conservatively, a corporation moves solely for profit, and he is definitely the kind of man who can bring in profit. Plus, the most important and the most tempting selling point of that deal, he would have his very own sugar mommy buying him anything he needed, so it worked in his favor. So yeah, he had no problems working with this beauty. So of course he perked up and thanked the woman for doing so much for him, even though they just met a few days ago. The woman told the kid it was no big deal. After all, he is a once-in-a-generation talent, so she would be explaining the details of their partnership later. Also, she asked if he checked his inventory for the summons he requested, which surprised the kid since he hadn't even signed a contract yet. Well, that is true, but she still prepared everything he asked for regardless of his decision, so he can just take it as her first gift to him. Yeah, I knew it. She's definitely thinking of becoming his sugar mama. Cut to the next day, and a person was seen climbing a mountain to meet up with someone. Turns out it was Ajin, who was worried sick about the kid since he hadn't contacted her in days, so she came all the way out here to check up on him since she knew this was the one place he spent most of his time at. Just then she saw a person walk past her, so she turned to see who it was and found our beautiful Tae-seop, and she was instantly smitten by her beauty. Plus that face. She was sure she had seen it before somewhere, so she began running through her memory to try and remember where she saw her, and then boom, an image of her popped in her mind about a social media post she saw while scrolling through TikTok, and instantly realized who the woman before her was. Story cuts to our Hungyu's serious face, who is screaming at the top of his lungs. Oh man, look what he did to our poor little Pixie. The poor thing looks like she is about to collapse at any moment. Just then he sensed a presence nearby, so he quickly signaled the rest to keep their mouths shut, since someone was coming. Looking back, our hero spotted Tae-seop walking up the place. Well, it turns out this absolute idiot of all the places in the city chose this to be their meeting spot and made the poor woman climb all the way up a damn mountain. That's when she noticed his team standing nearby and was surprised, since some of those guys she had never even seen before. Yeah, our boy knew it would be hard to explain to the woman, so he just told all of them to go back to training. Well, first things first, mommy bought him another gift today. Just then our hero saw a trade window appearing before him. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. You trade stuff with players using this window, and the reason people use this thing is so they won't get scammed by some scammer, because if someone is detected by the system who is trying to steal something from another player, they are instantly disqualified, and by disqualified I mean permanently. Holy, the woman brought the kid some pretty neat summons this time, so of course he hit accept. Just then he saw flashes of lights being absorbed into his body, meaning the trade was a success. With that, he thanked the woman for spoiling him with such valuable gifts. After that part was out of the way, she brought out the contract she prepared for the kid. So the name of the agency would be Yuba Ake, which she took from her surname. As for the profit man, this woman was giving him 70% with 20% going to her and 5% to our old man. Because apparently he is also part of the team. Well, not exactly, since he would be providing them with support from the bureau instead. Also, she hired Byung-jin and Tae-seop to work for them as well, which was surprising since those two work for the headquarters. Well, apparently that's where he was wrong. They used to work for the headquarters since she hired them for triple the amount the headquarters was giving them. Although our hero was grateful for everything, he still wasn't sure giving him 70% was a good idea and asked the woman if she was sure about handing out so much of the profits to him. She assured the kid not to worry since even though her share was only 25%, she was sure she could easily maximize the value of that percentage. Plus, there was another reason behind it. She knew this kid was going places, so she wanted to secure a good relationship with him, which meant putting aside greed and focusing on building that connection instead. As for our hero, he wasn't saying no to free money, so he signed the thing, and with that, the contract was finally complete. As both of them were shaking on their new partnership, Hungyu noticed something nearby, and whatever it was hiding behind those bushes in the distance. So he immediately sprang into action and leaped right in to confront whoever it was, followed by screams of a person that even scared the two of them. Just as quickly it was over, and they saw the guy walking out of the place with two individuals in his hands. Yep, little Ajin and her elf friend who had been eavesdropping on their whole conversation. After a bit, the girl was seen sitting in front of our hero with that annoyed look on her face. Turns out she is a huge fan of our mommy Tae-seop, so she followed her all the way here like a creepy stalker to see where she was going. But according to Ajin, she wasn't following the woman. She was just tagging along, since she was curious. Yeah, that's exactly what a creepy stalker would say. As for their conversation, she saw everything. Finally, having enough of his interrogation, the girl lost it and instead began questioning the kid instead and how he got so close to that woman. And more importantly, what kind of tricks did he pull on that innocent woman for her to come all the way out here to meet up with a nobody like him? Apparently, Tae-seop herself was happy that she got a chance to meet with our boy's sister since she was planning to meet with them in the future anyway. And Ajin was so stunned at the moment that she wasn't even able to utter a single word. And now that she was gone, she wanted to know everything and why she was here in the first place. Seeing her throwing a tantrum, our hero decided to tell her everything. Okay, this part isn't part of the story, but it was cute as hell, so I decided to put it in anyway. As for the story, yeah, he did end up telling her the whole truth. How her older brother used to be some big shot in a game, and because of that, he broke the recent records for the low-ranked dungeons, so that attracted many eyes towards him, and Tae-seop was one of those eyes. Yep, that pretty much sums everything up. Ajin did recall he used to be obsessed with a mobile game before his accident, so she asked if it was the same one. Yeah, no, that was one part of the story. Our boy didn't want to tell anyone just yet, so he played it off, saying that was a completely different game. He just ended up playing this one for just a year. But the thing was, just 1 year in this trash game was also a really big deal, and that trash game part really stung our boy. Still, she couldn't help but tease him since his gaming addiction scored him such a beautiful girl, so it all paid off in the end. Seeing her smiling like that, our hero felt a little bad for lying to her. But he has no other choice since there was still a really big chance something might go wrong if people found out he was the guy who ended this game 3 years ago. And he didn't want to lose the only people in the world who genuinely cared for him by recklessly dragging them into danger. Just then he heard the girl asking the reason for keeping this whole incident a secret from her. Yeah, he had no answer to that question, but he asked the girl to keep all of this a secret from their parents for now. Obviously she asked the reason for keeping this a secret from them, but our hero just asked her to trust him on this for now. Oh god, did Ramba just get squished under Pokryong's butt just now? And why on earth is Hungyu glaring at the little elf girl like that? Yeah, she had a really bad feeling about where this was going, and she wasn't planning on sticking around to find out. That commotion also drew our boy's attention towards the elf girl, so he asked his sister if she was planning on using her as her main summon. Well, the answer was a yes, so he suggested she get herself a shadow wolf and use the two together. Otherwise, she won't even reach 10% of that summon's efficiency. This was the first time she was hearing about that tame, so she brought out her phone to check the shop. Well, it didn't take her that long to find one, so she began checking for its stats, and apparently that's a B-ranked tame. So yeah, how was she supposed to buy a B-ranked tame with her current salary? Turns out that thing cost 500 million won, something that would take her around 20 years to earn. Our boy assured the girl not to worry and promised to get her that thing next month. Yeah, that's not a happy expression. She is laughing her ass off at that claim because her broke brother was planning to buy her something worth 500 million won. So she asked the kid to stop trying so hard to act cool in front of his little sister. As for that tame, she'll figure out something herself. Our hero just told the girl not to cry later from feeling touchy when he brings her that tame, after which he signaled his summons to finish their training for the day, since they were heading back. As for the girl, she got that same feeling from a couple of days back because her brother seemed like a completely different person now. Story cuts 1 week, and our hero was seen standing before a dungeon entrance with Tai Seop and the other two who showed him some weird vest that he needed to wear the whole time while fighting inside that dungeon. But since he had no clue what that thing was, he asked the girl. Well, it turns out the first product that their company would be selling was information. That's where this vest comes in. So that thing has a camera that would record his dungeon runs, which they would sell to the players for huge amounts of money. As for the vest, it's no ordinary recording device. It's a cutting-edge piece of equipment that has the ability to record his entire surroundings in 3D. Well, our hero didn't have a problem with that, so he agreed to do as the girl was saying. With him all set and ready, they rolled out the red carpet to get this show on the road. Just before entering, our hero reminded the woman this was his first time entering this type of dungeon, so things might not go smoothly, but she assured the kid not to worry since they would be editing the video anyway, so there was no need to stress. All he needed to focus on was clearing that dungeon. Well, that was a relief, so he got ready to enter. But then he remembered another thing and asked the woman if it was okay if he breaks the national record this time. Yeah, that was something she wasn't expecting to hear coming from his mouth, and she wondered if the kid was joking, so she just told him to relax and play comfortably like he usually does. With that, our boy stepped into the gate while recalling the current record for clearing this type of dungeon, which was 7 minutes, but for him, beating that record was a piece of cake. Coming to the other side, he found himself standing in the middle of what seems like the aftermath of a massive battle. And not far from his location was a literal army, which he needed to survive against for as long as possible. And no, it wasn't an ordinary army, but an army of undead. And behind the hordes of skeletons was a massive lich, also the boss of this dungeon and the one he needed to beat in order to clear this area. But before starting it off, he turned on the gadget thingy he was forced to wear to start recording. After which he got ready to summon his team to get this over with, and thanks to Mommy Taeseop, he now had enough high-level summons to form 3 separate teams. Team A being Hungyu and some other sniper guy with him and Harambe 2.0. Second team was healers, and for this dungeon, these were the 2 teams he chose to fight against the Lich. And with the timer now about to start, he ordered all of them to get into their positions. And with that, the thing started the countdown, and the Lich ordered all his minions to charge at the kid. But unfortunately for them, Harambe was their first opponent, and man, he didn't disappoint. The guy literally began crushing their bones with his brute strength. As for his backup, our hero instructed Hungyu to head in as well, while the other 3 were to provide the 2 with support from the rear. Well, that's all for today, folks. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up, and if you want to know what happens next, hit the subscribe button. Until next time, take care.